Fulgrim, also known as the Phoenician and the Perfect Son, is the demon primarch of the Emperor's Children traitor Space Marine Legion. Fulgrim holds the rather dubious honor of being the first primarch to ever ascend to demonhood, attaining apotheosis during the early years of the Horus Heresy. This in turn saw Fulgrim rise to become one of, if not the most formidable servant of Slaanesh, the chaos god of excess, pleasure and pain. Having obtained both immortality and power beyond comprehension, Fulgrim would grow increasingly bored and unconcerned with the affairs of mortals, preferring to spend much of his time within the Palace of Slaanesh, indulging in various acts of hedonistic debauchery with his demonic consort Nakari. In spite of this, however, the Phoenician would still lead his gene sons into battle on rare and sporadic occasions, such as during the course of the Pale Stars campaign, the Siege of Terror, and the Cacophony of Extremis 6. But perhaps Fulgrim's greatest achievement following his ascension to demonhood was during the Battle of Thessala, in where he faced off against his loyalist brother Rebuti Guilliman. While Guilliman fought valiantly during their duel, it was Fulgrim who would ultimately prove the victor, inflicting a mortal wound upon the Ultramarine's primarch by slitting his throat with a poisoned blade, forcing Guilliman to be interred within stasis for close to 10,000 years. Indeed, Fulgrim has access to a vast array of ornate and esoteric weaponry, which are all as equally exotic as they are deadly, ranging from iridescent polearms and living whips to sentient swords and envenomed talons. One of these armaments, an uncharacteristically plain and unassuming broadsword, is even rumored to be none other than the legendary Fireblade, a weapon which had been forged by and gifted to the Phoenician by Ferrus Manus, the primarch of the Iron Hands, and, at one point in time, Fulgrim's most beloved brother, though whether or not it is indeed the original Fireblade, still intact and uncorrupted after thousands of years, or if it is instead a demonic manifestation of some subconscious desire, remains unconfirmed. Some have even suggested that Fulgrim has within his possession a weapon so monumentally powerful that it could very well prove instrumental in one day bringing about the very downfall of Slaanesh herself. So is it possible that the Phoenician's arsenal contains one of the fabled Crone Swords? The Crone Swords are a set of 5 divine weapons that were said to have been fashioned from the severed fingers of Morai Heg, the Eldari goddess of fate. According to legend, Morai Heg, seeking to acquire the forbidden knowledge that flowed through her veins, would trick the war god Kalaman Chicane into cutting off her hand, allowing her to drink deep of the blood gouting from her wound and unlock all of the wisdom contained within. The crone's discarded hand would then be recovered by the smith god Vol, who would painstakingly fashion each of the goddess's fingers into weapons that, in the right hands, would give their wielders the power over life and death itself. Not only this, but according to Ivrain, the emissary of Ynnead, the nascent god of the dead, should she and her followers, the Inari, succeed in obtaining all 5 Crone Swords, then Ynnead will finally awaken to full consciousness and subsequently destroy Slaanesh. While the Inari would manage to recover 4 of the 5 Crone Swords, the 5th would now appear to be forever out of their reach, as the blade was stolen by the demon Shalaxi Hellbane, who then sealed the weapon away within the Palace of Slaanesh. Seeing as how Slaanesh had been brought into existence by the hedonistic actions of the ancient Eldari Empire, with her birth driving the species to the very brink of extinction, it would certainly be poetic and perverse irony for the Chaos God to bestow the final Crone Sword to one of her greatest champions. The main piece of evidence which supports the idea of Fulgrim being in possession of the final Crone Sword, aside from the fact that the sword had already been obtained by the forces of Slaanesh, is that the Primarch is often seen wielding a sword that is adorned with a large, egg-shaped jewel on the blade's ricasso, just above the hilt and crossguard. This, in addition to its overall shape and aesthetic, gives the weapon an appearance that is, superficially at least, similar to that of the other Crone Swords. However, such evidence does appear to be fairly weak for a number of reasons. The first is that this blade is not the only weapon within Fulgrim's arsenal to bear such ornamentation, as jewels of a similar size and shape are shown to be present on at least 2 different swords, a whip, and even his armor. Secondly, Fulgrim's swords appear to lack the transliquid power source that is visibly present on the other Crone Swords. This power source is, effectively, the Eldari equivalent of the power-filled generators found on Imperial weaponry, such as power swords and power axes, which envelops the length of the blade with hazy field of energy that disrupts any solid matter that it touches. Whilst Fulgrim's own weapons are capable of carving through both flesh and steel alike, like a hot knife through butter, this is more due to their demonic nature as opposed to them just being keen-edged. Admittedly, though, it does seem somewhat strange for the Crone Swords, which are said to be of divine origin, to incorporate technology akin to power-filled generators within their construction, as one would expect weapons forged by a god to be more, for want of a better term, classical, even antiquated to a certain extent, when compared to those crafted by mortals. That being said, however, it is worth noting that, according to the Liber Chaotica, the Eldari gods were originally created by the beings known as the Old Ones to serve as living weapons of mass destruction during the war in heaven over 65 million years ago, only to evolve into the first true gods of the Immaterium following the culmination of the war. Seeing as how the gods themselves were brought into existence during the height of a galactic war between two technologically advanced superpowers, it's more than reasonable to assume that any artifacts that they created would reflect such a fact in their design, or at least to a certain extent. Alternatively, given their supposedly divine nature, it's entirely possible that the appearance of the Crone Swords will naturally change over time in order to reflect the Eldari's cultural perception of how a sword should look, resulting in them sporting a more contemporary aesthetic as opposed to an antediluvian one. Such an idea wouldn't be entirely outside the realm of possibility, for there has been at least one documented instance of a Crone Sword shifting from one form to another. During the Battle of Ynnead, as detailed within the book The Fracture of Bealtan, the Eldari corsair, known as Prince Uriel, would be slain in battle by the Nurglite demon prince Garagogol. After his body was recovered and subsequently quarantined by his kinsmen, Uriel would be resurrected thanks to the efforts of Yvraine, who plunged the corsair's signature weapon, the Spear of Twilight, into his chest, and in doing so, forcing the weapon to return all the life force it had siphoned from its wielder over the years. It was then, as it was being brandished by Yvraine, that the Spear of Twilight would take on a new form, transforming from a spear into a sword, and in doing so, revealing that the Spear of Twilight was in fact one of the lost Crone Swords, only for it to then revert back into a spear after being taken up by Uriel once more. As such, while the swords wielded by Fulgrim may appear to lack the transliquid power source sported by the other Crone Swords, the fact that the Crone Swords can shapeshift means that any visual discrepancies between them cannot be taken at face value and must instead be taken with a pinch of proverbial salt. Ultimately, while there may be little to no concrete evidence to support the idea of Fulgrim being in possession of the final Crone Sword, the fact that the sword had been retrieved and interred within the Palace of Slaanesh means that the Phoenician could very well become its wielder in the future. The only question that needs to be asked is just what twisted and perverted lengths will the Primarch go to in order to obtain such a prize? What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.